Good morning. My name is Reverend Mindy Tucker. Let's begin with a time of prayer. And in this prayer, I invite you to keep your eyes open or keep your eyes closed, whichever you find most comfortable for you. As we do come together in prayer, we affirm our oneness with God and all of life. We tune into our energy centers that allow us to feel the vibratory energy of people far and near, that allow our minds to be opened up to new ideas and to remembering ancient wisdom. New ideas and ancient wisdom that remind us of our divine nature, our capacity to love, our capacity to accept and celebrate one another, our capacity to remember our own divinity, our own oneness with God, now and always. And so it is. Amen. Today marks the first Sunday in Advent. And if you grew up in a tradition where Advent, the Advent calendar, was used to mark a progressive approach to Christmas Day, then you're probably familiar with the 4 Sundays before Christmas being all about hope, peace, joy, and love. I did not grow up in a system that looked at Advent that way. I grew up in Unity, and if I ever had a Sunday school teacher or a minister that talked about the 4-theme Sunday construct, I just, it went right over my head. But in growing up in Unity, and it's a spiritual practice that I continue today, I consider Advent to be a gestational time. A time of inner work where I can go within, and each and every one of us is invited to go within and take a look at our consciousness and consciously tune our awareness to our oneness with God. In Advent, there are candles on an Advent wreath or perhaps set on an altar somewhere. Now, this part I did grow up with, lighting a candle each week, lighting an extra candle each week as we got closer to Christmas Day. And each candle that was lit, we would say, I light the light of Christ in me. I light the light of Christ in me as a ritual, as a symbol, as an outward recognition of our growing luminosity, our own soul's light becoming brighter and brighter in the world. My older son listens to podcasts. He's 32. It's an age-appropriate behavior for him to listen to podcasts. Sometimes in a week, he can listen to dozens of podcasts. And the reason why is because he is deeply interested in life, in understanding human nature, and he feels a greater responsibility to respond to our world, to his community where he lives, in looking at ways that he can participate in shifting the culture around the way we view each other and the way we respect each other and the way we love each other and the way we can support each other in times of change. So yesterday, he was telling me he was listening to a podcast that said religious rituals are on the uptick since the pandemic began. And he was really careful to point out that it's not religion that's on the uptick. It's not like more people are finding religion. It's the people who have religious practices that are engaging in them more frequently during the pandemic. And this makes sense to me because in unity, a ritual is an outer expression of an inner commitment. It's an outward demonstration of a belief or a practice that we are holding and an intention that we're holding on the inside. So if you think about christening a baby, the baby is born whole and perfect. The baby's born with a spiritual pattern for perfection. The act or the ritual of christening isn't about giving something to the baby that the baby doesn't already have. The christening is a celebration of what potential that baby can bring forth in the world. Communion. In communion, in unity, the bread symbolizes the abundance of divine ideas. The wine symbolizes that circulation or that flow of the presence of Spirit through our lives. So when we engage in the ritual of communion in unity, it's not about making those things come true. It's not like all of a sudden we're going to have greater access to spiritual ideas, the abundance of spiritual ideas, or we're going to be able to feel the presence of Spirit more acutely unless we have made that inner commitment to do so. So rituals shape our emotions. They direct our intention. They help strengthen and build the bonds that we have between ourselves and the divine. And they help strengthen and build the bonds that we have in community. Because now in community, we're looking at our rituals. It's like, what happened to our rituals? What happened to our traditions? How are we going to remember that this is a time that the divine is awakening in me? How am I supposed to remember without my rituals? It's not like God is gone anywhere. Eric Butterworth, Unity writer, says there is no spot where God is not. Eric Butterworth also says, particularly in this time of Advent, this is a time to remember that God is centered in you. God is centered in me. God is centered in each and every one of us. God is centered in you now and always. And I love this about unity because it's not about going out to find God somewhere else. It's about remembering that God is centered in us at all times, which is comforting when we think about who stole my rituals. It's not like who moved my cheese, but who stole my rituals. We were told this last week we weren't allowed to engage in the ritual and the tradition of bringing in large numbers of friends and families into our homes or go into gatherings, other places where there were large numbers of people. So the question is, how can we come into a season of Christmas, which has even more ritual, secular and religious? How can we come into a season of Christmas and know that our cherished traditions are going to somehow need to be re-imaged, reimagined, recrafted, and rebuilt in order for us to optimize our well-being? How are we going to do that? The $64,000 question without inflation, the $64 million question with inflation. What is it about the ritual of Advent that we can continue and reimagine and bring back into our lives so that we can be with our friends and our family and have our cherished traditions remain intact in some way? 2020 is a season like no other. And in consciousness, we've had to deal with a whole nother layer of expectations and reality checks. This has been a difficult year in terms of being constantly vigilant with our conscious minds so that we can be mindful about what we let into our consciousness, what we can allow in and have a reaction to rather than a response to in terms of emerging pandemic difficulties, in terms of listening to the daily news, in terms of restrictions, and in all of the things that make life, well, flat out inconvenient. It's like, what can we do in consciousness to be prepared in a time that we feel, dare I say it, might feel more like chaos? The Chinese military genius, writer, philosopher Sun Tzu in the 6th century BCE said, amidst chaos is great opportunity. Just now on the internet, lists are starting to be published that enumerate some of the really interesting innovations and opportunities that have come out in the year 2020. For one, drive-in movie theaters have made a comeback. World-class musicians took to social media to give us personal concerts from their homes. That was kind of nice. Tiger King somehow brought millions of people together. Didn't do it for me, but the Queen's Gambit that's coming out now, an entirely different ball game. Number 4, Hamilton, the movie. Thank you, Disney Plus, because it has lived up to its hype. Number 5, we've had time to read again, and we've been reading some really good books. Think about some of the bestsellers, some of the books that have been on the bestseller list for a long time. How to Be an Anti-Racist, Waking Up White. They were on the bestseller list for a long time. Number 6, puzzles and board games have become popular again. And the apps on the phone and on the computer that allow us to play games like Yahtzee with each other from anywhere in the world. I can play Yahtzee, I can play dominoes, and if I should be so inclined, I could play bridge. Number 7, many museums opened their collection to the public virtually. And I myself spent a good couple of days going through the Louvre in Paris while sitting in the comfort of my own home. In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. Now, I imagine that Mary, the mother of Jesus, felt the chaos, felt like her whole world tilted and fell into a giant mass of chaos when the angel of the Lord appeared and said, "Greetings, favored one, the Lord is with thee." Really? I'm alone. I'm pregnant. I'm not married. And maybe God is centered in me, but I certainly do not feel centered in God. Everything I have cherished, including my own life, is at stake right now in this present moment. So I don't know how you can just stand there and tell me that this is a good thing. So what does she do? Well, the story goes on that she listens to everything that the angel of the Lord said, and then she hightailed it up into the hill country to a city in Judah where she got to spend time with a woman named Elizabeth, who was not only family, but she was friend. And I thought, how perfect is this? family, that entity, those people that can, well, they have the capacity for unconditional love, and friends who are going to tell you how it really is. They're going to tell you the truth about anything because they're your friends. You know, there's something really foundational about family. Our families of origin are the entities and the individuals that give us a framework for our belief system. Everything that we believe about our finances, our health, our relationships, about spirituality, about religion, all of those belief systems are formed in the cocoon in our family of origin. Family of choice, on the other hand, family of choice is made up of our nearest and dearest. Some of them may be related by blood, and some of them may not be related by blood, but they're our nearest and dearest friends. Our family of choice, they're our go-to people. They're our friends. Ellen Goodman, who was a columnist for many years for the Boston Globe, says this about friendship, and I'm paraphrasing just a little. She says, friends allow us to look at ourselves with a new pair of eyes and a different mindset. Flaws can be recast as strengths, self-doubts lifted by acceptance. Friends are more likely than family to encourage change. So when we hear the story from the book of Luke about Mary with the angel of the Lord coming and la, 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 and then there's chaos, Mary, she runs off and she goes to someone who's both family and friend. Unconditional love, acceptance, an opportunity to support her in looking at herself and her circumstances with new eyes. Someone who's going to support her in a great time of transitional change. I think the story is also perfect when we look at it metaphysically. In Unity, we look at a story metaphysically because it brings it alive in us. And when something's alive in us, we have the opportunity to reframe our own vision. We have the opportunity to look at our own belief systems. We have the opportunity to see ourselves in the story, either as a lesson, a discovery of something new, or as a reminder of ancient wisdom. So when we look at a story metaphysically, we're every part of the story, we're every aspect of the story, we're every person, we're every place, and the time is now. So metaphysically, in the story about Mary, right now, right here today, this first Sunday in Advent in 2020, we're in a time of great chaos, and we are one with God. Two things. We are in a time of chaos, and we are in a time where we can recognize that we are one with God. Metaphysically, we look at the name Mary. Mary is such an ordinary Jewish name, and I can identify with ordinary. I feel ordinary at Christmas time because I feel like I have very ordinary desires. I want things that are universal. I want to be with my friends. I miss my people. I miss my regular activities. I miss my ordinary interactions with people and with the world. I want to have an ordinary experience of going Christmas shopping. I just want to be ordinary. And so I identify with that part of Mary that is ordinary. But there is nothing ordinary about me, about you, or about anyone else. In fact, we are beloved expressions of God. And we are here for an extraordinary purpose. It's a purpose of healing, a purpose of reconciliation, a purpose of shining our light. And isn't that what the Advent season metaphysically is all about? It's about preparing to shine our light in a whole new way. And that's extraordinary. So when we look at Mary, there is nothing ordinary about her. And in fact, her name, Mary, is a derivative of Miriam. And Miriam in the Bible has a long history of being significant. In fact, it goes all the way back to the beginning of Jewish history. Miriam was the sister of Moses. And Miriam and Mary, they both metaphysically represent an awakening soul to a higher purpose, a higher spiritual potential, and yet still holding on to the past. And I think that's where the chaos comes from. Here we are in this rich and fertile time. We have been cocooning not just for Advent. We're not in just this gestational time where we've been doing a lot of inner work, not just in Advent, but since March in the United States in 2020, we've been spending time being introspective. We've been spending time apart from the world. We've been spending time looking at ourselves and really focusing on family and friends and finding comfort in those religious rituals, those outer symbols of our inner commitment to shine our own light and to be who and what we're born and created to be. And yet, we're still hanging on to the past. It's hard sometimes to let go of the past. So when our soul awakens, or as our soul awakens, because it is right here, right now, remember metaphysically, this is the time. So as our soul awakens and we find ourselves still holding on to the past, that's friction. That's chaos. And yet it is a time that is ripe with opportunity. Metaphysically, in a story, when there's a change in geographic location, what we're really talking about metaphysically is a change in a state of consciousness. So there's Mary in a state of consciousness that's represented by Nazareth. Nazareth thoughts are about being watchful and guarded. The time is now. The place is here. Consciousness about being watchful and guarded. I wish I could do that thing with my eyebrow. You know, just when one eyebrow goes up, have we been experiencing a state of consciousness that's watchful and guarded? You know what that means? That means we have been spiritually awakened. This is good news. That means that we are holding on to the past. When we hold on to the past, it's because there's some lack going on in our mind. And when we recognize, when we give voice to, and we say, wow, look at this lack, I am afraid, that's lack thinking. We can shift into a whole new state of consciousness. We can shift geographically, metaphysically, into that Judah consciousness. We can go to that city in Judah in the hill country, which is lifted up, hills, mountains, lifted up. It's a higher consciousness. Well, what do you do when you get good news? What do you do? I usually do some form of the happy dance. If you're sitting down, your feet can just start tapping, and they start to tap because you're happy and you can't help it. You just have so much joy that you begin to vibrate with joy. But if other people are watching you and you want to be really cool, or you don't want them to know how happy you are, because I don't know why you wouldn't want them to know, but sometimes it's good to have things that are private, you can just let the butterflies in your stomach do the dancing. The very next thing I do, when I have good news and that I'm excited, I call family and friends. I want them to celebrate with me. That's what Judah consciousness is all about. It's about celebration. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, said, the more we praise, the more we raise. The more we praise, the more we raise. Oprah says it a little bit differently. She says, the more you praise and celebrate your life, the more there is in life to celebrate. And I like both of those because they're perfect for Judah consciousness. They're perfect for coming into a whole new way of being. They're perfect for us to be supported by the universe, by that God, that divine nature that is centered in us always. But it is human nature not to go through life alone. It is human nature, even though we're on a spiritual journey, to be in community, to be with other like-minded people. And I think that's what unity is all about. It's about come to be with like-minded people who want to take responsibility for expressing their divinity, who want to take responsibility for fulfilling the extraordinary holy purpose that we were created to be and live and do and have. We need Elizabeths in our lives. In Luke, the way the story goes is Mary walks in the door. She's with child. There she sees Elizabeth. Elizabeth, she's with child. And when they actually come face to face with each other, the child that's in the womb of Elizabeth leaps in recognition with the child that's in the womb of Mary. It's an energetic support, telegraphing, telepathically, moving across distance. I mean, really, if you think about somebody who's a friend or family, somebody who's one of your nearest and dearest, all you have to do is think of them and feel that leap of recognition within yourself, knowing that that friend, that nearest and dearest, is here in your life right now, in the midst of chaos, in the midst of opportunity, in your awakening. They're here to support you in your time of greatest change. They are here to tell you how it is. They are here to help you reframe any part of your life that needs to come into alignment with your Christ light, with that center of God consciousness within you. There is something in you that is waiting to be born right now. You can make that into an affirmation for yourself. There is something in me that is waiting to be born right now. And you are surrounded by the universe. God is centered in you. Light a candle to remind you of your luminosity, your growing luminosity. There is something in you that is waiting to be born. Let's take that idea, that thought, that affirmation into a time of meditation, a time of integration. So if you've been taking notes or, I don't know, had a posture that wasn't relaxing because you've been intent on discovering what value there is for you in this message and in the story of Mary, her change in consciousness, her friction because of her awakening and her realization that she's still holding on to the past. I invite you to just put all of those wonderings and all of those discoveries, all of those remembrances down, and find a place where you can relax. Maybe even close your outer eyes as a way for you to engage in the ritual of meditation. Breathing in, breathing out. Tuning in with exquisite awareness to the way God is centered in you. God is centered in you. See the light of God in you. See that glimmer of hope, knowing that there's a plan to prosper you, a plan to give you a hope and a future that you have a vibratory connection to an incredible network of support. There is something that is waiting to be born in you right now. Right now is the time to lift your mind and lift your heart with a focused awareness on opportunity, on good news, on those feelings and sensations of praise, about 1, 2, and then 3 things that have come out of 2020 that are good for you. And then another 1, 2, or 3 things that you celebrate about 2020. For it is this consciousness of praise that allows you to relax your vigilance and step into hope and faith that you are in the right place at the right time, right now. Something great is waiting to be born in you right now. Using your breath to remind you of the support of the universe, using your breath to remember that God is centered in you always, I invite you now to come back into awareness of where you are, how you're holding your body, and then return your outer eyes to a brand new world, reimagined, re-engineered, with new support, new love, new hope, and new faith. Thank you for being a part of Unity Spiritual Center of Hilton Head. My name is Reverend Mindy Tucker, and I have enjoyed spending this time with you.